I want to turn now and talk about Sidney Powell. I will tell you, she's been on the show a bunch of times. Sidney Powell is a former U.S. attorney. She's the author of the book License to Lie. And she was on, in fact, on our YouTube page, America, if you're watching on YouTube, America Can We Talk, on the YouTube page is a very lengthy interview I did of her about 6 weeks ago, I think it was. I have it across the top because people are enjoying watching it so much. It's lengthy. It lays out the whole long history of getting where we got to the Russia-Trump collusion. And it's a stellar interview, but I had a little chance to talk to her over the weekend, and I want to just bring a little bit of an update about things. Number one is this. Now, and I think most of you probably know, Sidney Powell represents Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who is he's a two-star general. He is a man who served this country for decades. While all of us are safely home in our houses and living our lives, he was serving America, living abroad, being far away from his family. And so he came back to try to help in the Trump administration and got caught up in the Trump, the Mueller collusion perjury trap thing that the Mueller team set up. So he did plead guilty to something, and now his representation has been taken over by Sidney Powell, and things have changed. One particular thing I'll tell you about that you can read about is there was a criminal prosecution pending in the Eastern District of Virginia in a federal court, and the person who was being prosecuted was Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's business partner, whose name is Bijan Rafikian, or he often goes by just the last four letters, Kian, but anyway, his full name is Bijan Rafikian. He was Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's business partner. Most of this prosecution centered around the federal law called FARA, which basically requires if you are an American citizen and you represent a foreign government to our government, you're lobbying on behalf of a foreign government, you have to register. And I meant to look up in the way here, Foreign Agent Registration Act, I think is what FARA stands for, F-A-R-A. So this is one of the things that Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pled to, that he had filed an incorrect, no, he hadn't pled to. Let me get to the story that I was hearing from Sidney. The bottom line was the prosecutors in this case were trying to force Lieutenant General Michael Flynn to go on the stand and testify that at the time he filed the FARA application, he knew that some of the statements were not accurate. That he knew essentially they were false statements and he was signing it. And he, said, no, I'm not going to do that because I didn't know. The point of getting him, this was a loud screaming match battle between the prosecutors and a bunch of other people, with the point being prosecutors were trying to say, basically, we don't care whether you knew. You need to get on the stand and testify. And this is getting around to one of these points about draining the swamp. The attitude of the American left, especially during the 8 years under Obama, especially Department of Justice, FBI, the idea that you simply have the right to twist and contort the law to bring it around to what you want it to be. And this is why, for example, we've talked about many times in the show about Andrew Weissman. He was even more apparently now, after we all watched the Mueller testimony in Congress last week and realized Mueller doesn't know anything that happened. He was befuddled and confused the whole time he was the whole time he was testifying in Congress, that he never heard of Fusion GPS, seemed to not know much of anything. Well, many people inside the Washington bubble have talked about really that Mueller wasn't in charge of the investigation pretty much the whole time. Andrew Weissman, his alleged second in charge, the two have worked together for years. Andrew Weissman was really the one running the whole thing. Mueller, to repeat something someone who was involved said to me, was sitting in the corner twiddling his thumbs. He really didn't know what was happening. So Weissman was in charge. This Weissman is the guy who is one of the central figures in the book that Sidney Powell wrote, License to Lie, where she describes Weissman's conduct in the Enron case, in which he literally created criminal charges that don't exist. He pulled a piece from this law and a piece from this law, put it together, and got convictions. And only when it got all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court did justice finally get served, and the Supreme Court decide 9-0, telling Weissman, you can't make up stuff. You just can't cook up charges that don't exist. You can't make up new law in order to get the guy you want to get. He was described in great detail in her book as just a truly vengeful, not just hard driving, trying to get the conviction, but willing to contort the truth, mislead the court, do whatever he had to do to get the conviction. One of the other central things he did, and then we're going to get back to Flynn, was, as described in License to Lie, is that he withheld evidence that is called withholding exculpatory evidence, evidence that you're required as a prosecutor to turn over to the defense attorneys if the evidence will in any way help the accused be able to prove their innocence, or that would help the case that the accused is trying to present in any way. Weissman had that information, in the Enron prosecutions and held it back. So now back to where we are. I think these prosecutors in the Department of Justice, especially those going after Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and his business partner Bijan Rafikian, have never seen the likes of Sidney Powell. She is just not letting them run roughshod over her. She will not do it. She is standing up for her client. She's insisting, you're not going to tell my client you have to plead to something, or because you're being threatened. If you won't plead to this, we can bring other charges. We might bring charges against your son. Again, recently, with respect to this case in Eastern District of Virginia, where his partner Bijan Rafikian was found guilty by a jury last Friday, the prosecutors had been floating the idea, maybe we'll charge Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's son again. I mean, threatening him to try to force him to do what they wanted him to do. He wouldn't give false testimony. They got the conviction anyway. According to many lawyers involved in the case, there is very high likelihood this conviction will be reversed on appeal. To tell you just one little tidbit of it, FARA, it is a federal law. I mean, it does, if you are in Washington and you're representing a foreign government, you're supposed to file and say, yes, I am here on behalf of the government of Russia or Italy or whatever country it is. But usually what happens, and there's also usually often a question, if you're representing an entity within a country, a business, or even a group of people who aren't officially the government, but maybe that group of people connects with the government periodically or is guided by the government, or that group is in fact acting in the interest of the government. These questions are not black and white. Do you have to file the FARA form? Do you have to file and say that you are acting on behalf of a foreign government? Because sometimes you don't really think you are. You're thinking, well, my client is, this, and you may not know behind the scenes that your client is really connected to the government. Well, that was what was happening in this case. There was not any knowledge on behalf of the according to Michael Flynn's position, not any knowledge on behalf of them that the entity that they were working with was really controlled by the Turkish government, and therefore they should have had to file this form. So, end of the day, they got a conviction of Michael Flynn's partner, but many people think it will be reversed on appeal. But this is a crime, if you want to call it that, this FARA thing, the determination of the Mueller team to prosecute people in any way to get to President Trump, to taint President Trump, to maybe turn them so they will turn against President Trump, that determination is on steroids. And many people will report that FARA violations, often what happens, especially the kind of case where you didn't really know you were representing a foreign government, you thought you were representing somebody, and turns out they were kind of connected. It's like a letter in the mail. Hey, you know what? It looks like your client's kind of bridging or getting close. You should file a FARA. It's a small fine, if anything. Making it a federal case. This guy is 67, I think, Michael Flynn's partner, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's partner, and facing 15 years in prison. And in a thing which, if it isn't reversed in appeal, and he may not get that kind of sentence, but the point is, I want to close out this, two last points on this story. This is the ongoing coup attempt to take out President Trump. We talked about this in many different avenues, many different venues. The idea within the Justice Department, they were not going to let him win the presidency. All of what they did during the 2016 presidential campaign, all the efforts to undermine Trump, to connect him with Russians when there was no such connection, to bring about the whole getting FISA court warrants and spying on Trump people, and all with the effort to build up in the minds of the American people that President Trump was corrupt. And then we had to have the Mueller investigation. And everyone's thinking, well, as soon as Mueller's done, everyone's going to see Trump was a criminal. There was conspiracy. He didn't. And by the way, collusion isn't a crime. It's conspiracy is really the crime. Collusion became the word people use, but that's not really a crime. But the conclusion of Mueller was no conspiracy between Trump and the Russians. So that you would think would cause this to be, okay, put it to bed. Can we move forward? Can we do the business of the American people? But this is still that same mindset that you had inside the FBI early on in 2016 and all the way up until now, inside the Department of Justice, this determination to take down President Trump. This is the ongoing coup. This is the corruption inside the DOJ. This is why it is so vital to have Attorney General Barr continue his investigation, his determination to figure out who it is, how this whole thing got started. Barr seems very, very committed. This is a great thing. But the last little pitch I want to make on the whole Sidney Powell and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn is that Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, already literally is broke. He was forced, in order to pay the cost of his attorneys, forced to sell his home. He is broke. So this is the first time I've ever done this on a show. I've done the show over 5 years. First time I'm going to say, if you're concerned about justice and you care about getting to the truth, you might want to consider supporting Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. There is a fund to help him. Mike Flynn, like M-I-K-E, then F-L-Y-N-N, defensefund.org. It's going to be on our Why It Matters at the end. It's going to be on my Facebook page, Mike Flynn, defensefund.org. Any contribution will help, because literally the man's, his life savings have been drained. He doesn't own his house anymore. I mean, they are literally extremely struggling in order to get by. And any help you can offer would be, and I will keep you posted on this prosecution, because I think Sidney Powell is just, I don't think they've seen anyone like her. She is determined to bring justice for Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, which I believe ultimately should be that all charges are dropped. He can withdraw his guilty plea, or charges are dropped, or at the highest level in the highest court just say, just throw everything out, because the guy was truly railroaded by the Mueller team.